Hey, Allison. Good to see you. Hey, Margaret. Hey, Deb. How's it going, everyone? Good to see you all. Happy Tuesday. Hey, Mary. Happy Tuesday. So happy to see you all. Whoop. Hold on. Let me lower my volume just a bit here. Hello, everyone. Hey, Ashley. Good to see you. Your name is now Vendor on the. Hold on. Let me unmute you. Is that your son's name or your husband's? Oh,
Yeah, it's my son.
right on. Awesome. Cool. Well, it's great to see you. Welcome back.
You too. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So let me just say, yeah. So I'm just welcoming everybody in. And let's get started because it's 11:01 and I'd love to take full advantage of our time. Hey, Delilah, good to see you. Hey, Delilah, is it Delilah or Delilah? Sorry, I unmuted you.
And my parents are from Portugal, so it's Dalila.
Dalila, I like that. Okay, good stuff. All right, thank you. All right, awesome. So great to see everyone. Today's topic, I think, is to me something that has been really helpful for in the last, I guess, month in dealing with this new reality that we're in, and something that's been helpful for me in life in general, but is specifically very, very helpful now. And I hope that you'll find it helpful as well. I'm really curious to know. So what I just want to make a quick announcement, just so you know, I'm excited because for those of you who filled out the form of the course, I just really appreciate your feedback. I got a lot of great information from it, and I created this course that I was talking about in the last 2 weeks. And it's I'm still finishing up creating it, and it's going to come out probably by the end of this week. So I'm really excited, and I will let you know when it comes out. So today's topic is all about understanding that discerning what we have control over and what we don't have control over is a very important skill to have. So when we deal with, whatever is coming up for us right now in our life on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, it's important for us to realize that there's certain things that cause us some suffering or maybe some stress that we think we might have control over it, but we don't actually have control over it. And kind of learning to sit with that and understanding, okay, like if we don't have control over some of those things, instead of necessarily fighting against it, what do we want to move towards? So I want to kind of ground this and give you all some examples. By the way, before I do, I just really want this to be a bit more interactive. I'm curious if you could put on the chat, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing today? Like, how are things? And please feel free to be totally honest. Like, this isn't a place where you have to be like, I'm a 12 out of 10. Like, you can, of course, if you are, you know what I mean? But you feel free to share if you're like a 3 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10, like for us, I think it's, yeah, thanks, Kate. I appreciate that. Yeah. Mary, okay, so Ashley's at a 7, and feel free to look at the chat too. And by the way, the other reason I do that is because when we divide into small groups, feel free to really check in with one another and be like, oh, I noticed you were a 4, or I noticed you were a 5. Like check in, like, how are you doing today? And as much as I can, I will do that as well. So I think, Kate, like that this is one of those things, like I'm feeling kind of like at a 6, I'd say, today. And I think that today's topic is one of those things that can really help. So Tyrion, stoked that you're at a 9. Dalila, that's awesome. 9. Yesterday 3, today 5. Totally get it. All right, cool. Thanks for sharing all that. And I want to give you some examples of challenges that I think, challenges that I think you might be facing, certainly challenges that I'm facing to a certain extent. So here's some very common challenges now. So For example, as an educator, like right now that the inequity in students' experiences is magnified now because some students have internet connections, others don't. Some have parents who can teach them, others don't. And there's some things that you can do about it as their teacher, as their educator, as person who working with them. But there are some things that you absolutely cannot do. And it's in sitting with that knowing and that helplessness that we might not be able to support them in this way that we really want to. I think that's where the magic begins to happen in understanding, okay, like if we can welcome these feelings and experience this helplessness, then we can start to have a little bit more peace and be more present for them for what we can help them with. Here's another example of a common problem for educators now. um, one or two parents are upset with you for how you're handling distance teaching, or distance learning with their kids. Like 28 other parents might be really happy, but one or two are not, right? And so, like, again, it's kind of out of your control to a certain extent. I mean, sure, there's some control that you might have over it, but a lot of it is out of your control because you can't control their character or the way they are. Number three, maybe even your own kids are having a hard time with schooling now. And of course you have some control over it. You can help them some, but the truth is you also have only like X amount of hours to help them because you're balancing a lot more on your plate. You're working and you are, parenting. And it's incredibly tough right now in that way. The last one is one of my favorites. I talked to a principal and also a few teachers about that the other day. And they're like, how Gavin Newsom made the announcement that schools might reopen in July? And and then all of a sudden, the principal ended up having literally in a span of like 10 minutes, she had like 50 emails all of a sudden of like, whoa, school's reopening in July. Tell us what is the plan? Like, what are we do? And then parents like got, parents emailing them like, hey, let's like, okay, like I hear you're opening in July. And it's like, no, I literally just like, I'm not Gavin Newsom's friend. You know what I mean? Like Gavin Newsom doesn't just like talk to me directly. I heard it just like when you heard it, and I'm not ready to, you know what I mean? So there's things that again are within our control and things that aren't. So I want you to take one moment and think about right now. We're going to do a little journaling, and we're going to do like 3 different prompts for our journal today. And so for this first prompt, it's very simple. I want you to think of a challenge that you're currently facing. And I want you to write this challenge down in as many details as you can, kind of paint the picture of the challenge. But importantly, write down what your beliefs are about the situation, and then what your beliefs are about yourself in the situation. So I'll give you an example. If I'm thinking, let's say that my kids are not learning as much as or as well as I kind of want them to, some of the beliefs in my situation might be that my kids are that like I don't have a belief about myself might be like I don't have the skills to help them. That might be that. Not to say that that's actually my belief, but or another belief might be like I don't have the bandwidth to help them. Another belief I might have about the situation is the school is not doing enough to help them. Like, does that make sense? So as much as possible, like really like describe the challenge and sort of paint the picture of what beliefs you have about the situation and then what beliefs you have about yourself. I'm going to play a little bit of music in the background as you do this, and we're only going to do it for about a minute or two, just to kind of again paint the picture of what we're dealing with. I'll put it in the chat as well so you guys can see the prompt. Take another 30 seconds just to kind of wrap up. Beautiful. Now, one of the things that helps me the most when I think about this topic of what I have control over and what I don't is the Serenity Prayer. Now, I imagine that some of you have heard it before, but if you haven't, here goes. The Serenity Prayer says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think there's a lot of wisdom in not only the whole prayer, but especially this last line. And one of the most important lessons that I'm picking up from this is when we devote a large amount of time of our attention to things we cannot change, we expand physical, emotional, and mental energy that could be directed elsewhere. And nowadays, your energy management is more important than ever. I am dead, like I'm gonna make that point like super loud and clear. Like it's so freaking important right now, our energy management. Like we need to work out, like we need to like really take, take it seriously and not just put it aside again. So important. So I want to make another really important point here, and that is accepting accepting that there are some things that we cannot change, even if there are things that we really care about. Accepting that there are some things that we cannot change does not make you complacent. I'm going to say it again. Even if you really care about, for example, supporting kids as much as you possibly can, if you accept that there are certain things that you cannot change right now, it does not make you complacent. In fact, the more intentional you are about it, you become less reactive, and actually you then are able to conserve your battery in such a way that for things that you do have control over, you can actually support your students in a more effective way and your children in a more effective way. So, by the way, I love that someone said that that's your daily prayer. I think that's beautiful. So, in a moment, we're going to write about what we do have control over and what we don't in the context of this problem. We'll journal about that for a bit. But what I ask is that you be really honest with yourself. So sometimes we want to have control over some things that we really don't have control over. And I think it's important that if that's your case, like just be honest with yourself. Just come to terms with it. Like, oh, I wish I had control over it and I feel helpless and that's hard for me. Because that's where you begin to experience some peace once you begin to accept the helplessness. Now, other times, we know that we can have control over some things, even though we wish it wasn't so. So it's important for us to also be, truthful about that as well. So the next prompt is exactly that. I'm going to put that in the chat. And again, I'm going to give you about a minute or two to write about this with some music. So with the challenge you're facing, what do you have control over? What do you not have control over? Just think very carefully and be honest with yourself with this question. We'll take another 30 seconds or so. Maybe another minute. All right. Now, what's interesting is that most people think the Serenity Prayer is only those 3 lines. And it turns out that the Serenity Prayer actually is a lot longer than that. And one of the line that comes a little bit after those 3 lines in the Serenity Prayer is, "May God give me the ability to take the world as it actually is, not as I would have it." And um, I love this line, and I'm not sure if you are familiar with the work of Byron Katie, but Byron Katie has another way to say it. She wrote a book called Loving What Is, and she basically says, if you fight against reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. And so to me, like when we face these things that we don't have control over to a certain extent, instead of fighting against something, I think it's important that we ask ourselves the following question: what do we want to move towards in this scenario when we have some control over it, but not full control? There's some things we can't change. What do we want to move towards instead of fight against? So in the chat, I'm just going to put the last prompt up. We're just going to take another minute or two to journal about that. Then we'll break into groups and then discuss, process it, and then come back and we'll do a meditation. So again, instead of fighting against the challenge you're facing, what do you want to move towards? So I'm going to give you another minute or so to journal about that. Take another 30 seconds. All right. Beautiful. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break you into groups of 3. And what I ask is that you share your responses to the 3 prompts. People who are listening, again, I just invite you to, as much as possible, not interrupt, and as much as possible, just really hold space and be there for them. Get curious about their experience. You can, and you can even acknowledge them as well. And yeah, just be there for them. Be empathic to what is happening. If you have a solution that you want to give them, or a fix to their problem or whatever, I just ask that you first ask them whether they even want to hear a solution or want to hear a fix, because a lot of times people just want to have space be held for them. But if you have a good fix that you really want them to hear after you've held space for them, you can ask if they want it, and if they really do want it, you can share. But again, the point is not to fix here. The point is just to continue and connect. So I'm going to divide you into groups of 3, and I'm going to give you guys about, let's say, 6 minutes or so. We're going to come back, do a short grounding exercise, and quick connection, and then we'll take off. So let's do groups of 3. I'll say 2 to 3. Here we go.